What's up guys, Agent here again with another PTS video, and today we're going to be discussing one of the new crafted sets known as New Moon Acolyte. So this is a pretty interesting set. It's very stat loaded, but it does come with a little bit of a downside, so it was kind of a debate as to whether or not this set would actually be worth running. And based on just a few parses, it does seem like it could be good in certain sort of combinations here. So for this video, we'll be taking a look at two different parses, one using this new set, New Moon Acolyte, and the other one using a more traditional set, Mother's Sorrow. So first, what exactly is New Moon Acolyte? Well, it is a crafted set from Southern Elsweyr. In terms of where it can be found on the map, you go over to Southern Elsweyr. It is found right here under Fur Forge Cove. I don't know if there is a closer way shrine. Didn't really explore this area too much here, but the closest way shrine that I was able to find, you can use the Western Plains way shrine or perhaps the Senshal way shrine. There might be one up north maybe, but I didn't see it pop up on my radar when I found the crafting location. But this is where you would normally craft New Moon Acolyte. It does require 9 traits in order to craft this. It is the same as other sets like Mercolden, Twiceborn Star. You need to have 9 traits known. So this is going to be sort of the end game crafter sets here. Now, onto the actual set bonuses themselves. Like I said, very stat loaded. So this is New Moon Acolyte. It adds weapon crit and spell crit on the 2-piece. It adds weapon damage and spell damage on the 3-piece. It adds physical penetration and spell penetration on the 4-piece, and the 5-piece adds 481 weapon and spell damage. To give you an idea, this is basically, if you are not a hybrid build, obviously, this is pretty strong. So you get crit, damage, physical pen, and a buttload of damage as the last 5-piece. Now you will notice that last bar of the 5-piece says that it increases the cost of your active abilities by 5%. Which is actually a very big drag on your sustain. It's actually quite noticeable on races outside of Bretons, and even on a Breton you will end up noticing that cost increase as well. Now, to kind of give you an idea of how strong that 5-piece is in terms of just raw weapon and spell damage. Its Burning Spellweave provides 525 spell damage when it procs. When you take into consideration the cooldown on it, it's only 60% uptime on Burning Spellweave, which ends up putting it at around 367 or so effective spell damage. Spell Strategist gives you 500 weapon and spell damage on a single target that you need to light attack in order to get that additional 500 weapon and spell damage, or I should say 500 spell damage. Flanking is also, I believe it's 450 when you attack enemies from the rear or the flank. And it's only on targets that you're attacking from the rear here. Hunding's Rage and Julianos, the 5-piece, both only provide 299 weapon or spell damage, respectively. So 481 weapon and spell damage, flat. It's a flat bonus here. Is incredibly strong. Now, it is offset by the fact that it does increase the cost of all your abilities. So this does end up eating into your sustain. And this does also include ultimates as well. To give you guys proof, I am wearing the 5-piece. My ultimate here costs 78. The bear ultimate costs 78 ultimate here, whereas normally it would cost only 75 ultimate. So it does take into consideration ultimate costs. So something like, for example, on a, let's say you want to use the Destro Staff ulti and you don't have any other sort of ulti reduction, it's 250 ultimate normally. Additional 5% on top of that would jump you up to 262. Ultimate, which might not seem like a lot, but if you think about the base ulti gen, that's an additional 4 seconds you have to wait between ultimates, which could potentially, cause a little bit of it depends. But for ultimates, not that bad. It's really the main abilities here. The Deep Fissure right now costs 2162 Magicka, Screaming Cliff Racer 2403, Fletcher Infection 2643. If we go ahead and take off one of the pieces to Moon Acolyte so we don't have that additional cost increase here. 23, 22, 2089, 2554. Now, while it might not seem like a very large increase, again, you can see it's it's anywhere between 100 to maybe 50 additional extra Magicka. You have to consideration these are your spammables, so it does end up eating into your sustain by quite a bit, especially if you're not a Breton. If you're not a Breton, and let's say you're a Dark Elf or a High Elf, you will notice that sustained drop comparing sets between like Mother's Sorrow and New Moon Acolyte. Unfortunately, I did not save the parses here. I was kind of in another place, let's just say. I wouldn't really think about saving the parses, but to give you an idea, the 74.5k parse on my Magicka Warden here. This one here, I had to do one heavy attack, as you can see here. With New Moon Acolyte, I believe I had to use 6 heavy attacks. Let me see if I have that parse. I do not. So I did need to do 5 or 6 heavy attacks on a Dark Elf in order to sustain a light attack rotation, perhaps a little bit more. So it's quite a big jump in sustain here. However, you can see here that the Breton parse that I did here, 73.9k. So only about 500 DPS difference, 600 DPS difference. And if you take a look at our, we don't want all this, we want resources, magic percentage. So they can get rid of these. So this is the Magicka that I had throughout the parse here. And you can see that even though I did drop fairly low, especially towards the end here at about 30% Magicka remaining, I didn't really drop close to 0. Like I said, unfortunately I did not save a parse as a Dark Elf. And even if I did, I believe this wouldn't necessarily work as a Dark Elf, so I would have to save, respec and all that stuff, so that we wouldn't necessarily get this graph here. But this is pretty noticeable. So I would say that this set, if you are already a Breton, I'd consider running this set here. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that even though you do get the additional spell crit armor bonus, it doesn't quite meet that inflection point where Shadow will be stronger than the Thief. So here you will want to run, if you are running this set, you will want to run the Thief Edgemundus rather than the Shadow, just because your base spell crit is going to end up being a little bit lower. You might want to run the Shadow depending on your front bar set. So for this particular setup here, I did use Sororia as my front bar set, so I don't have any additional spell crit. But let's say you want to run False God's Devotion, or maybe Mother's Sorrow as the front bar set, then you would want to use a Shadow. So I used a Thief here just because I thought it's kind of around that inflection point where it doesn't really matter which one. But if I were to actually make a build using this setup here, I'd probably say stick with the Shadow, just because it's not the spell crit that you're at isn't quite enough to really say one's better than the other. And if you do end up running something like False God's Devotion or Mother's Sorrow on the front bar, obviously Shadow's going to be stronger. So I'd say just stick with Shadow rather than the Thief like I have here. I'm sure if I ran the Shadow instead of the Thief, I might be at around the same level, about 74k DPS or so. So in terms of New Moon Acolyte, assuming they don't change it going into what's it called? This is I'm blanking. Dragonhold. This set might actually be pretty decent on sustain-oriented builds. So for standard DPS, you would want to be like a Redguard or a Bosmer perhaps. Magicka, you would want to be a Breton. And you can see here that compared to a Dark Elf, which gets the max Magicka and this additional spell damage, pretty close DPS. You're only about 500-600 DPS behind, which to me is within margin of error. Obviously, I need to do some more parses in order to get a better idea of where New Moon Acolyte stands in comparison to Mother's Sorrow and Sororia. But it definitely looks very promising for this set, so I would definitely recommend keeping an eye on this set as the PTS progresses. But that concludes this video. Hope you guys found this informative. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below, or if there's anything you would like me to test on the PTS, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Again, I will not be here. I am traveling. By the time when this video is released, I will likely still be in Taiwan. So, unfortunately, I will not be able to get to any tests that you guys leave down below until Monday. Let me just double check the date. It is Monday the 23rd, so that's when I'm going to be back. So, don't expect any additional tests until that time. But hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.